Welcome to a special episode of Firebreathing Kittens. This is our rules discussion, where we discuss the rules we played in the past few games for May 2026. We'll discuss the tabletop role-playing games Cottages and Cerberus, Pride and Extreme Prejudice, Ecryme, Kaiju Girls, Tiny Dungeon 2nd Edition, Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition, Tunnel Goons, and Alloyed version 2.2. Let's dive right in, reading these reviews written by our Firebreathing Kittens players and game masters. The episode This Old Guild Hall featured the RPG system Cottages and Cerberus. Our first reviewer said, "Getting spoons back was a bit weird. It's really based on focusing on the cozy aspect rather than sleeping at night. You have to improve the cottage to have a chance to super succeed, to heal and recover spoons. The fights in Cottages and Cerberus didn't scale to having 2 party members instead of 4. Our second reviewer said, "I think Cottages and Cerberus is a very unique game with a lot of fun mechanics. It's very different from traditional tabletops, with pretty simple rules. There are some things that could use tweaks, like the healing mechanics and maybe making the monsters roll sometime to hit. It's very difficult to regain spoons, especially if you run out to 0. It is a tabletop that provides all the framework and all of the story beats for you, so it doesn't allow a whole lot of creativity outside of that." Our third reviewer said, "I thought recovering spoons by only doing activities that actually recover mental energy was interesting. Sleep might heal physical wounds, but it doesn't necessarily heal emotional exhaustion. That was a neat mechanic compared to other games. There were a lot of cool monsters. I was a bit confused why the tree monster was shooting fireballs, though. That was a bit off-brand for trees. But I liked the shark dog and the fungus dragon and all the art for the monsters, and the way they have a unique action for each monster that they take at the start of every combat and end of every turn. The abilities listed at the end of the Cottages and Cerberus book for character building were very expansive and give a lot of replayability." The episode The Quartet Resumes featured the RPG system Pride and Extreme Prejudice. Our first reviewer said, "The system itself is relatively straightforward for a 1-page game. The lack of 6 is really weird. The fact that there's only one way to succeed with no failure is super strict. I get it because it's extreme, but the fact is that literally 9 times out of 10, something bad is going to happen. That's 90% of the time when you're rolling a d10. But it works well for a roleplay heavy game because rolling is so minimal." Our second reviewer said, "The Pride and Extreme Prejudice rules need more fleshing out. It's great to have a 1-page system to go off of, but there needs to be consequences for actions and wins for actions. Pride and Extreme Prejudice seems to only have downsides. As a GM, more help on what it is that you're supposed to be doing during a module would be appreciated. I didn't know what to write the story as because it's weirdly vague, but really cool premise still, it just needs some love." Our third reviewer said, "There's a list of what happens when you roll, and it's like 1, 2, 3, etc. to 10. I didn't notice this at first until it was pointed out to me, but there's no 6 on the list. We're not really sure what to do when you roll a 6. Nothing? The lower one? The higher one? I don't know. So that makes it feel like the creator of the game maybe didn't play it, or play it enough. I feel like I received someone's game idea written on the back of a bar napkin. But that's on theme, because writing fast was the best part of this game. Definitely my favorite mechanic I've played recently. What if everyone had 30 seconds and an index card-sized piece of paper to write their turn out, and if they stop mid-sentence, that's all she wrote. That part was really funny. And then collectively controlling a mech based on the order of commands on index cards that either get slapped down into a pile or sent first into the chat when playing online adds hilarity in the order of what happens when individuals collectively steer one body. That reminds me of another game from the same designer called Crash Pandas. Half the fun was because we're all controlling one car with our individual choices. Also, for a game that emphasizes that your characters have suitors, there is no mechanical way to interact with said suitors in Pride and Extreme Prejudice. There are no role-playing mechanics, only mech combat mechanics. Finally, I'm not sure how long battle should last because there is no guideline for how many successes are needed to end a combat or any stats for enemies. So, Pride and Extreme Prejudice was a great back-of-the-bar napkin game idea. Could use some more polish and an explanation of what rolling a 6 does. Our last reviewer said, I like, in Pride and Extreme Prejudice, that you could write everything you want to do on your turn on your index card. It didn't feel rushed, it felt like good pacing. I'm not sure if that was the good GM or the good content. The 30 seconds move things along. The rules do need more explanation. Even if you want to make it a one-page game, you have to fully explain how it works. I really enjoyed Pride and Extreme Prejudice, and I thought it was a lot of fun. The episode Snap Back to Reality featured the RPG system Ecryme. Our first reviewer said, I really enjoyed the Ecryme mechanics. They are similar enough to other TTRPGs that they come naturally, but they're also unique and have their own spin that sets them apart from other systems. I especially like the use of the margin mechanic to determine outcome rather than a strict pass or fail. I definitely want to play it again, but in an Ecryme-specific setting rather than porting it into a different one. I think it would be better played in the world that the creators imagined. Our second reviewer said, once you get through the very thick rulebook for Ecryme, the game is remarkably easy and fun to play. The 4-dice attack mechanic is especially clever. That alone would give me reason to want to play it again. Our third reviewer said, I enjoy the Ecryme mechanics, though it felt like they were missing pieces. A good session 0 is needed to ensure that this is the system for the story the players want to tell. I really like the traits mechanic and the margin. I thought it was a really neat mechanic to separate your reserve from your success. Would definitely play this system again. Our last reviewer said, the word choice and organization style of the Ecryme rulebook are hard to learn from. The words being hard to understand could be because it's translated from French, or could be because they invented new words. For example, they invented the word traumatology instead of using the word medicine. That new word added a pause between me reading it for the first time and me understanding what it means. Traumatology means medicine. Oh, okay. I can learn new words, but there's gonna be a pause and a barrier. And it happened a lot. Anthropomechanology. Urbanotechnology. Traversology. These words are not things native English speakers instantly understand. It takes a moment. A pause. A gap. Extra effort. Here's an example. There are 3 skills called quibbling, loquacity, and guile. Which one do you think you use when role-playing that your character is lying? Quibbling, loquacity, guile. I guessed guile. I was wrong. When I read the skill description, I learned guile was for physically hiding. That gap in communication happened to me frequently when reading the Ecryme rulebook. It took more than one attempt to understand what the writer meant. I have to wonder if this was what the experience was like for someone reading it in the original French. Did they, too, have to pause to read the definitions for many new words? The organization style doesn't help. Instead of grouping all the explanation for a new word together in one section, the definition is spaced out in different places. I'll use the example of trying to learn what a spleen is. So the author has used the word spleen. What does it mean? No, it's not the organ. The explanation starts on page 197. Because off-topic example boxes interrupt it, the text continues on to page 198. The words about spleen would have all fit on one page if they weren't interrupted. It's a character's motivating fear. Okay. Then the rulebook changes topics, and one could assume that's all you needed to know about spleen, until 5 pages later, there's a self-contained paragraph talking about spleen on page 204. The paragraph doesn't reach the end of the page, so you wouldn't think to turn it. But wait, there's an info box with spleen examples on the next page. It's good you didn't miss it. They list some example driving fears big enough to motivate a whole life. Ah, that's great. You figure you're all good on understanding spleen. It's a motivating fear, just used for character roleplay. You flip a few more pages and, not seeing more, conclude that you're done. Unfortunately, even though you found all those information nuggets, unless you happen to skip 30 pages later and read page 239, you won't know that spleen gets used when rolling. We started on page 197. There was a lone paragraph on 204, a box on 205, but the actual rolling mechanics weren't until page 239. Spacing spleen out across pages like that makes readers likely to miss some of the explanation of what a spleen is and how to use it. Now imagine it's not just one word, like spleen, but the whole explanation of how to play Ecryme giving you the runaround. For me, it would be easier to not have those 5 and 30-page jumps dividing the explanation of one idea. I prefer it when all the information about one idea is grouped together continuously. The episode Midterm Monsters featured the RPG system Kaiju Girls. Our first reviewer said, "I liked how simple the setup was. It was super easy for me to know what I was doing and create a character. It was nice that it was simple and to the point. Easy to join the game." Our next reviewer says, "Kaiju Girls is a one-page game, so there's a lot of the fruitful void, a lot of space to add things. We were talking about maybe there's a way for a kaiju to get back health since it can't actually harm us. There are a lot of things that are missing, maybe deliberately, from this rules set. As far as how it plays, I actually didn't feel that it encouraged me, unless I metagamed, to not try to get the most number of dice and play to the things I was strong at. Until I, the player, wanted to have my character turn into a kaiju. Like, my character doesn't want to turn into a kaiju, that sounds terrible, but I, the player, want to. So unless I deliberately choose to make choices that are not things she'd want to do, to give the role a chance to give me a stress dice. Like, I don't think my character would in character want to attempt something she's bad at, but failing is the only way to get stress dice, and stress dice are the only way to turn into a kaiju. The rule set made me, the player, metagame. The design intent is for me to want to do the things I'm bad at. I did not feel like this succeeded at that intention. Sorry, Grant, I love you." End quote. That was from the reviewer. Our next reviewer said, quote, "Kaiju Girls is really simple to understand. That made it easy to join in even as a person who doesn't do this often. It was simple, it was great. I liked the ability of the game to try to do whatever you wanted." Our last reviewer said, "Kaiju Girls is a game where you roll a 6-sided dice for anything you try to do. and 1 extra dice for every trait your character has that applies to what you're trying to accomplish. If you fail to get a 5 or a 6 on any 6-sided dice when you roll, you gain a stress dice. Then, when you roll again, you include the 6-sided stress dice in your dice pool. Successes on stress dice count towards your successes. If there is a 1 on any stress dice, you transform into a kaiju or back into your regular form. When you transform from kaiju to regular form, you are exhausted and out of the combat, and your stress dice count resets to 0. I like the general idea of the game, but in practice, the probability of failing when rolling 2d6 is so low that it just didn't happen enough for some players. The odds of not rolling a 5 or a 6 on 2 dice are 4 sides out of 6 sides squared because you're rolling 2 dice. That's about 44%. It seems like enough to guarantee every player gets a stress dice after a few rolls, but it didn't work out that way. One of the players got frustrated by rolling multiple times and never getting a stress dice. Once you have a stress dice, you're basically not going to get a second one because the odds of not getting a single 5 or 6 on 3 dice is 4 divided by 6 cubed, which is about 30%. But with only 1 stress dice, the odds of getting a 1 on that dice are 1 in 6 or 17%. So you spend the majority of the game rolling 1 base dice, 1 trait dice, and 1 stress dice, and don't actually transform into a kaiju. Wishing you would transform so you could use all the mechanics of your character, but not being able to. I think the game would be improved if stress and transformation were more frequent. For example, if only a 6 was a success, not a 5 or 6. And if a 1, 2, or 3 on a stress dice led to a transformation. I suspect the idea of having stress dice that when they roll a 1, a different thing happens than when a normal dice rolls a 1, that mechanic might have its origins in the Alien movie franchise role-playing game. But in that game, I think 1s on stress dice damage the player, where here, 1 on the stress dice unlocks the player's preferred combat form. So we wanted it to happen. Combats were over so quickly because of their maximum challenge rating of 10, lasting at most 3 rounds and often 2 and usually just 1, that transforming back from kaiju into the normal form and being exhausted wouldn't have been all that bad, especially not with multiple party members able to carry on fighting. Even if all 3 players got transformed back into their non-kaiju form and exhausted, their characters are just out of this scene's fight, so it's not as big a problem that you'd want to avoid at all costs as something like a hit point system with characters taking damage and potentially dying. There is no way mechanically for player characters in Kaiju Girls to die, or even get hurt. The stress dice event triggering more often would have added more stakes to the gameplay. The episode Spiders and How to Care for Them featured the RPG system Tiny Dungeon 2nd Edition. Our first reviewer said, quote, "The thing I like about Tiny Dungeons is how simple it is. It's 2d6, 3d6, or 1d6. And knowing the criteria for that is super easy. I appreciate that. The character sheet is super simple and easy to read on the fly. Building monsters for this adventure was also easy, and there are several examples in the book. The things that I do not like as much. 1, I do not like having to roll dice as a GM. That's just me. And the venom requires that I hit, and then the player characters fail a saving throw. The spiderlings require the same thing. That's not great. That math doesn't work out very well for the attacker. It's great if you're attacking the PCs and that's the mechanic, but if the PCs had that same mechanic, then they would be frustrated by that. So that is the one part that is a little bit less awesome. But that said, Tiny Dungeon, Tiny Pirates, Tiny Cthulhu, all of those are very simple and enjoyable to run." Our second reviewer said, I really like Tiny Dungeons. It is a very simple system to jump into and to understand. Character creation was simple, quick, pretty easily moddable. I think this is a great game to bring people into tabletop role-playing games. It gives the flavor of some of the heavy hitters like Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder without getting bogged down in minutia. Our last reviewer said, Tiny Dungeons was fun to hop into. Super simple setup. I just really liked how simple it was. The episodes My Best Friend Cthulhu and Dreamwalk Estate featured the RPG system Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition. Our first reviewer said, Call of Cthulhu makes it easy to get scared and embrace the horror and mystery aspects of the game. I heavily utilized the reference sheets for roll, success, and combat. I also realized after we started playing that the skills I needed to invest into my character sheet are really tailored to the kind of adventure you're playing in, so I might want an idea of the kind of adventure I'll be in before making a character. Our second reviewer said, In this game, make it a point to really not hesitate to think outside the box with rolls and skill checks. In character creation, if you're visually reading the rules and lost on something during character building, go look on YouTube, because there was a quick video I found specifically on character build for 7th edition that allowed me to pick right back up, and I got it done in 20 minutes. Our third reviewer says, quote, Call of Cthulhu. I think that maybe adding some more dice variations, like different types of dice rolls, like d20s, d8s, outside of combat would be nice. We didn't have to do any combat in our session. I like how everyone was unique, and even though we had good chances of doing good, it doesn't matter if you roll bad. It was very interesting. I liked the sanity. Our next reviewer said, I've played Call of Cthulhu a lot. It's one of my top 5 favorite RPG systems. I love how crunchy it can be. I like how even if you are good at something, you can still roll real bad. I like the sanity system. I like how it's variable from person to person. I have so many nice things I can say about this system, so I'll just leave it at that. Our last reviewer says, I really enjoy Call of Cthulhu. I appreciate how crunchy it is. The D100 system is fun after playing with the D20 for so long. Definitely better for one-shots than a campaign. Suits a mystery very well. I look forward to playing more of it. The episode Back to Futures Past featured the RPG system Tunnel Goons. Our first reviewer said, quote, Tunnel Goons was pretty fun. It was easy to understand the combat system. The combat rules system was great for a beginner. The inventory system was easy to understand as well. Character creation was not too complex. Good for beginners. It was fun. I would have liked to have had maybe one more skill. I liked Brute and Erudite and Skulker, but maybe something else. One more. Our second reviewer said, The combat in Tunnel Goons is swingy. Either you land a blow and the enemy's difficulty to hit and health both decrease, or you don't, and it remains very difficult to hit and very high health. The first time you land a blow on a 12 difficulty enemy is really important. Because items add 1 to your roll result, and there wasn't a rule saying you could only add 1 item to your roll, it almost turns into a game of how many items can you use in one action. I was reminded of the show MacGyver. Piecing together parts of different items to make one tool make a huge difference. Our third reviewer said, For a shorter system, Tunnel Goons was absolutely fun for beginners. For advanced players, this breeds a lot of creativity while fostering a beginner environment. The inventory system is interesting, though a little limited. I can see if more long-form campaigns could benefit from this, but as a shorter system, that's not likely. Combat is fun, with a very loose initiative system that allows for players to build on top of what they've done previously, providing a great yes-and environment. The episode My Girl Scamantha featured the RPG system Alloyed version 2.2. Our first reviewer says, quote, Alloyd's character sheet has a plus or minus 2 maximum written under its traits, but there's nothing in the rules explaining what that means. In the example combat, the barbarian has plus 3, and the wizard has plus 4 in their trait. So why does the character sheet say plus or minus 2 maximum? We'll never know. Alloyd's rulebook encourages its GMs to have a GM NPC. They call it a GM avatar, and encourage the GM to load their GM player character up with loot to actively fight in combat, saying it is useful for preventing total party kills. That's unusual amongst rulebooks. Our second reviewer says, I liked the freedom that Alloyd gives. The loose nature of it is definitely good for one-shots. However, it does that difficult thing of trying to occupy an in-between space of being both kind of crunchy and also kind of loose. I think it works okay, but I find myself wanting to play something with more rules or something with less rules than Alloyd after a day. I think that's just me, though. The game works as it was designed, I just don't know if it's a game for me. It was definitely a lot of fun to play, though. Our third reviewer says, quote, The Alloyed rules system is complete chaos and it's wonderful. The spells are broken, but that makes the game very interesting to play as long as you have a GM that rolls with it, which we did. More clarification on healing is definitely needed. Adding attack stats and stuff to the character sheet is also helpful if they don't have the cheat sheet. Our last reviewer said, Holy moly, I did not anticipate how powerful the player's spells were, but that made it so much more fun. So when GMing, I love the freedom that this system allows, and it doesn't bog down the battles specifically or generally as well. Everything else in Alloyd was pretty clear. Having a formalized mechanic to restore traits or hit points would be nice, but leaving it to a GM fiat works too. And thus concludes all of the feedback that our players and GMs have written for the games that we have played recently. Now is the time when I share my personal thoughts. I've got 2 questions here, favorite game and most excited about what upcoming game. Alright, first one is, favorite game for me. Was it Cottages and Cerberus, Pride and Extreme Prejudice, Ecryme, Kaiju Girls, Tiny Dungeon 2nd Edition, Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition, Tunnel Goons, or Alloyed version 2.2? I gotta think about that. I think my favorite was Call of Cthulhu. I like that there are like 45 different skills. That's such an unusual number compared to other games. All the other games have, on average, 3 skills. I mean, maybe 7 skills. Ecryme had 15, but like 45? 45 skills? So when you actually play the game, your points are spread out so that you're either terrible at everything, like universally, there's nothing you're good at, or there's like 1 to 5 things you're good at, and then you're terrible at everything. And it's just madness. I mean, obviously, yeah, that's a pun, because Call of Cthulhu is about losing your sanity as you face horrors beyond your comprehension that once you understand, it's probably bad that you did. But my point is, 45 skills. That's so unusual. It really gets you in the mindset for this horror mystery investigation that you're like, I see that there is this skill that I could be using right now, and I see that I do not have a lot of points in it. So it humbles you. You're an investigator of things that you are not going to do well at investigating. And if you do, it will not benefit you to have investigated them. It is such an unusual game. I'm going to try to investigate this thing with my 30 in this skill. That's a 30% chance to succeed. That's right. You heard me correctly, and I am going to do this. What a strange yet wonderful game design. All of the other games, like, I'll list them. Cottages and Cerberus, Pride and Extreme Prejudice, Ecryme, Kaiju Girls, Tiny Dungeon, Tunnel Goons, and Alloyd. These other games, they operate in, like, a players should generally succeed when they roll sort of mindset. Not Call of Cthulhu. I don't think you generally succeed when you roll. And if you do, it's because it's that one thing that you're good at. That's just one thing. That's your thing. Everything else you're terrible at, and you're just gonna hope that you scrape by and survive this investigation of the horror mystery somehow. So it's different, and I like that. It was very fun to play. I definitely want to play it again, and it was well designed for the goal. If it was a game that only had like 5 traits, like all the other ones, then you could put all your points into one thing. And just do that and be good at it all game. My points are all in this. I do this. I succeed. Ha 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 ha. You know, Call of Cthulhu, there's, like I said, 45 skills. So it will challenge you. And your character will fail. They will find things that humble them. They will face the unknown, the terror, the insanity of something greater than them. And the game makes you roll the dice and feel that. So that's interesting. All right, the next question is, most excited about what upcoming game? This list includes Nice Marines, Behold the Holy Grail, Call of Cthulhu again. That's right, we're playing it again. We liked it. We're gonna play it again. Reverse Beastmaster, Gates of Crystalia, the official tabletop role-playing game of Terry Pratchett's Discworld, Omega Horizon, Slavborg, Corpborg. I should probably explain what these games are. Nice Marines is a one-page game about adapting from being very good at war to not being great at interacting with civilians. I think that's a delicate topic, and I'm a little afraid to approach it. Behold the Holy Grail is about a game that says you have one pool of points, and you can divide them as you choose between strength and virtue. So, like, the more strong you are, the least virtuous. That itself is quite a conundrum, isn't it? That those who have power do not have the virtue to wield that power. It's definitely very knight-themed. I like that. Call of Cthulhu, again, looking forward to that. Reverse Beastmaster. It's a game where a normal Beastmaster talks to animals and gets them to do what you want. A reverse Beastmaster listens to animals and has to do what they tell you. And that's just hilarious. And I have no idea how it's going to work. I do know that the person operating the animals is going to be one of the players, and it rotates. So whoever claims that animal first, that person puts a sock puppet on their hand and moves their hand up and down to mouth the animal talking. So it sounds like it's really gonna be different every group you play it with. There's Gates of Crystalia, which is one of those beautiful rulebook games. I am a sucker for a beautiful rulebook, and that rulebook is all like candy pop colors and anime drawings, and I'm like, oh, I just want to read the rulebook. Okay, also it does matter what it's saying, but man, the art alone will make me excited to play that. Second reason I want to play Gates of Crystalia, it uses cards. I love cards. Rolling dice is also fun, but I feel like every game rolls dice, and Gates of Crystalia lets you use playing cards, and that's really exciting. So, okay, and then there's the official tabletop role-playing game of Terry Pratchett's Discworld. I mean, it's Discworld. I gotta play the tabletop role-playing game. I read those books in a formative time in my past many, many years ago, and I just remember loving that luggage character. Basically, it's a box made out of sapient pearwood. Again, this isn't going to make a lot of sense, but I'm just going to explain it. And the box follows this person around and carries their luggage because there's like hundreds of little feet underneath the box. And this is making less sense the more I say. Basically, the box follows you around so you don't have to wheel the luggage around, carries all your stuff, and is bigger on the inside. How convenient. Except that when its owner's not watching, sort of like a misbehaving cat or dog, it protects that owner in very malevolent ways. It opens and eats a person and they're never seen again. Like, and then the owner has no idea that that person was a threat to them. And the third party is watching this like, okay, I'm not going to make that luggage angry. And it was just so funny to me way back years ago when I read it. So I've always liked that luggage in Discworld. And I think playing the tabletop role-playing game will be interesting just because of the franchise it's based on. I have no idea what the tabletop role-playing game is going to be like, but I'm looking forward to trying. Yeah. Okay, and then Omega Horizon Space. I want to play about space. I don't know much about that game, but I know it's set in space. And then there's Slavborg and Corpborg. Slavborg is like Merkborg plus racing. I do like racing. And then Corpborg is like Merkborg plus evil corporations. And I mean, hey, that's a pretty easy villain. So, most excited about what upcoming game? All of them. They all sound really fun. I'm just happy to get to play games. Alright, well, if there were any games that you thought were cool in this episode, I've listed the titles of the episodes so you can, listen to their actual plays and see if you want to play that game with your friends. And if you do it. It's fun playing games. Get some friends, play some games. You'll have a good time. Bye.